Hi guys, my name is Susan Tucker and I'm talking to you today about relationships and love from a third culture kid perspective. I was born in Sydney in Australia to an Australian mum and an American dad. They actually met in Japan. They got married in Hong Kong. They lived all over Asia. They lived in California, where my sister was born, and then they lived in Sydney, Australia, where I was born and my brother was also born. So, needless to say, they've always instilled in us really strong appreciation for different cultures, both through their example, but also from experiences that they provided for us. And one of the most visceral experiences was when the family all moved up to Singapore in the 90s. My sister, myself, my brother, we all went to international schools, and it was just such an incredible experience. I mean, I had friends literally from every corner of the globe. Um, I had adopted what they call an international school accent, which I think is just such testament to how wholeheartedly we all embrace each other's, different, nationalities and cultures and accents. It kind of all blended into one, almost like a neutral, global accent, mix of Swedish and English and American, Australian, kind of, found its own lilt, which, sometimes I fall back into depending who I'm talking to. I have a lot of really fond memories of my time in Singapore. I remember one of my Japanese friends, I'd go to her house after school and her mother would teach me how to draw the Japanese characters as we'd sit around, munching on pickled cucumbers. I remember going for roti prata after school with my friends. I still love roti prata. Um, I remember in our art classes, we were learning how to draw with wax pens, batik, how to do silk printing. We had origami classes. Um, I've always been a fan of theatre and was in the school play. And I remember it was on, set in the Industrial Revolution in England, and the cast was blended across Asia, Africa, Europe, America, Australia. Um, Most of all, I definitely remember just the warmth and acceptance from my friends and their families whenever I was in their homes. Um, so the time flew by, and before I knew it, it was time for us to move back to Sydney, finish up our high schools there. And that is where I had a major culture shock. I went back to a private girls' Catholic school. So I'd gone from one extreme to another. Broadly speaking, everyone kind of looked the same. Everyone kind of sounded the same. Everyone kind of, did the same things, and everyone adhered to the one national culture of Australia. Um, I, I mean, I had the most awesome high school and university experience in Sydney. I met so many amazing people, had huge opportunities, so no complaints at all, and I really enjoyed it. But there was always a part of me that just quite missed the variety of friendships and the variety of experiences that I'd been privileged to have when I'd been in Singapore. So fast forward, and I end up moving back to Singapore. A happy coincidence. My job at a multinational offered me an opportunity here. So I've been here now for 6.5 years. I actually was able to rekindle some of those friendships that I'd had all those years ago. People who had left Singapore had come back, as I had. I also met more, wonderful people here, and I met my now husband here in Singapore, who also went to an international school. Um, so, as I was reflecting on this talk, I was, thinking about the differences or similarities, between friendships that I had had in Singapore and those I'd had in Australia. And I realized, it's a simple truth, but everyone, everyone is different. No matter whether they belong to one culture or many cultures, it doesn't matter. We're all incredibly unique. We've all had such varied experiences. So, when I think of friendships, what is it that, creates those commonalities between us when we're all actually very different? And I realize it's simply just values. Having common values is what it is that is required, I think, to have friendships. So, I was thinking, what are my values? And I was thinking, okay, I value honesty, integrity, loyalty, open communication, giving back to the community, positivity, and having a really good time. And then I was thinking of my relationships in my life. And I realized that every single one of those really special relationships, no matter where that person is from, every one of them, we had the same values. So, then I was thinking, well, what about this third culture kid phenomenon that we're talking about here today? And I looked at my special relationships, or the people in my life who I feel the closest to, and I realized actually there are quite a large proportion of those who are what we would describe as third culture kids. And, not just people from, places that are obviously very multicultural like Singapore, but, the people that I'd met even in, quite a homogenous environment of that Catholic girls' school. Most of the people I feel really close to and we have the same value system do have that kind of multicultural perspective in some way. So it made me think, okay, back to the topic of this talk, is there something different about third culture kids and how they, approach relationships or even life? And I think, yeah, I think there is. I think probably what's shared across third culture kids are some traits like openness, acceptance without judgment, adaptability for sure. And I do also find there's usually an empathy and a social conscience that is common across what we call third culture kids. So, what does that mean, I guess, for third culture kids or others? I think that, these days with technology, the world is so incredibly connected. Everything is literally at our fingertips. I don't think that it's any longer kind of the privilege of those who are able to literally live in different cultures or have, those sort of tangible cross-cultural experiences to result in those traits. I think, we have such an opportunity now, and it's already here, and it's just going to become even more incredible over time for people to really immerse themselves in, different people's perspectives and realities. And I do think that already we're seeing globally more exhibits of these traits of openness, of social conscience, of empathy, of adaptability. We're already seeing a sort of a little bit of a movement towards people who are demonstrating those. And I feel that, whether you're a third culture kid or just, a millennial or just really, engaged in the world, you are probably going to have those traits. And I think those traits are what are going to, shape our future. An example of this, last year I was in Shanghai for a work trip. I was doing consumer research, and we had a break. And I hadn't been to Shanghai before, so I went out and I just wanted to explore a little bit and see a bit of the city. And I'm so bad at directions. I got really, really lost, and I was running out of time to get back. So I saw these two, young girls, and I thought maybe they can help me. And they were really lovely, greeted me warmly in American English. One was blonde, the other one looked kind of Middle Eastern, and they were probably like 14 years old. So I explained where I needed to go, and they turned to each other and just launched into lightning speed Mandarin, conversing with one another, figuring out obviously the simplest way to tell me how to get there. And I was just like, wow. And then they came back to me and told me where to go in their American English. And I was, just so amazed. I was like, oh, wow, you guys speak, is that Mandarin, fluent Mandarin? And they go, oh, yeah, sometimes it's just easier. And went on their way. And I just thought that was so cool and so exactly what I want the world to be and what I hope it will be, in a nutshell. And I think, if the future is going to be ruled by girls like that, that's going to be a pretty cool future that I'm very excited to be, a part of. So I guess, to bring it back to the question of third culture kids, do they have a different approach to relationships and love? Yes, I think so, due to those traits of openness, adaptability, acceptance, empathy, social conscience. Is that, only for third culture kids? I don't think so anymore. I don't think culture is what it used to be. It's no longer shackled by geographies. I think culture now is so much more defined by values and shared values. So, the future is probably going to be shaped by people with those values and those traits. But it doesn't have to be a third culture kid. I think we're all slowly and surely becoming third culture, as it stands. So anyway, that's my perspective. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.